All eyes are on the West African country Ghana for the Year of Return 2019. This country is the first country in the 21st century to attempt to bring the African diaspora to the continent for a pilgrimage, for tourism, and for whatever it is that they're expecting to get. And this didn't just start. If you don't know, well, there's some history behind this. I have a guest here who will speak more about the Year of Return. But before that, let me give you some background to the Year of Return. In 1913, there was a Ghanaian man called Alfred Sam. So Alfred Sam was a merchant. He was also a Pan-Africanist. They call him the pioneer Pan-Africanist because he normally traveled to the United States where he does business. So he developed an idea to bring African Americans back to the continent. Alfred Sam bought a ship, and in 1914, he started a campaign in Oklahoma where he wanted to bring about 600 African Americans back to Ghana, to Salt Pond in the central region, and he promised to get them lands in Akim in the eastern region of the country. So he got 60 people signing up, and the 60 sold everything they had, and they made it to the ship and got to Salt Pond in 1915. In 1915, they were very happy, they were received well, but they didn't get the land they were looking for because there was rivalry between the locals and the African Americans. Some of them lost everything they had. They came with everything, but they lost everything, and they couldn't do anything about it. But to return to Oklahoma, some also went to Liberia, where they started new life. Well, this is about to change because the Ghana government is trying to do this the right way to make sure people are able to return to the country. And one person who is very key in this campaign to bring African Americans back home to Ghana is my guest. He's an African American, and it's an honor to have him here, and also for him to be named or appointed the tourism ambassador of Ghana to the US. So my guest is Diallo Sumbry. He is a key part of the Year of Return 2019 in Ghana. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Diallo Sumbry.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on your appointment as the ambassador for Ghana as on tourism to the United States.
Yeah, it's an honor. It's a big position. It's a heavy weight. So I'm looking forward to stepping more into the role and helping out where I can.
So what's your connection with Ghana? Are you Ghanaian?
I'm not Ghanaian, actually. I am a Trentonian. I was born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey. But I'm a Pan-Africanist. So I grew up again in Trenton, New Jersey, and then from there, Washington, D.C. Like most of us diasporans who have that gap in our history, and we are not able to trace our lineage directly back to our village or, to our family. I have done my African ancestry DNA test. So my African ancestry DNA links me back to the Fulani people of present-day Nigeria on my mother's side, and the Ateke people of present-day Gabon on my father's side. So while I have found out what's in my DNA, I'd like to say that Ghana's my spiritual home. So while my mother's family comes from present-day Nigeria, my father's from present-day Gabon, I think I chose Ghana and Ghana chose me, so to speak.
So you can't say Ghana stole you?
No. There's no more stealing of people happening.
Okay, we thank God. Yeah, so you are here now.
Yes.
And you're on the steering committee of the Year of Return.
Yes.
In Ghana.
Yes.
And how is that feeling like?
It's work. So we've been, I think it's important to also say, and for people to understand, that the concept of the Year of Return and the idea of Africans coming home after 400 years as a general concept is not really new. People have been talking about it for years. So a lot of people believe in the 400-year prophecy. It's in the Bible. I don't want to quote the wrong chapter and verse, but I know it's in Genesis. 400 years is also marks the arrival of the first documented enslaved Africans into the United States. So all of these historical facts are facts that people have known for a while, but I think, like you said in your intro, Ghana being the first African nation to actually put together a program called the Year of Return is something that I'm involved in. It's something that I've been involved in from the beginning with the Ghana Tourism Authority in terms of helping to bring the idea to the forefront, develop it, and now working with the steering committee to continue to push these ideas.
Which year did you consider yourself a Pan-Africanist? When did you realize that I am in that space and this is what I'm destined to do?
Well, I grew up attending independent African-centered schools in the United States. There's an organization called CIBI, Council of Independent Black Institutions. And my mother and father were co-founders of a school in Trenton, New Jersey called African People's Action School. I went there from preschool through 5th grade. And then from 6th through 8th, I went to an all-white school, which was very interesting, kind of growing up in a Pan-African nationalist environment. And then you go to an all-white school. And then I moved to Washington, D.C. with my mom and my brother and sisters in like 1989. So then I went to another independent African-centered school. So my life has been reared and brought up in Pan-Africanism thought and action, as well as nationalist thought and action. And for me, having an African-centered view just really means that you understand that Africa is the cradle of civilization, and that various peoples on this continent are really the progenitors of civilization and created a lot of what we use today, math, science. So learning from that perspective is kind of how I've been taught my entire life. I think at some point everybody comes to a crossroads, right? In your human development, in your adult development, you come to a crossroads and you have to decide if you're going to go the way you were taught or do something different that you learned along the way. You know what I mean? Like if your father's a blacksmith or a tailor or a builder, you learn everything your father learned as you come up. But then when you get to be a man or a woman, you decide if you're going to do the same thing or something different. And I can't say when necessarily I've decided or if I decided, because when you walk with your ancestors and when you walk with spirit, sometimes you don't always get to fully choose. Sometimes it's like this is kind of what you're going to do. And I feel like, as I've been searching for my purpose in life, it's been put on me that this is my mission, so I've accepted it.
When did you find Adinkra Group? That's the African Cultural Resource Center.
Right, so the Adinkra Group came about in like 2003, 2004, actually. We have some studios at home. My family grew up in the arts, West African drum and dance. I've been traveling to Africa since 1988, mainly to the Francophone countries. We have a full djembe drum and dance orchestra. So I grew up in the cultural arts in Washington, D.C., in New Jersey. So being a part of African culture, so to speak, isn't new. Traveled to Senegal a number of times, Mali, Gambia, Guinea-Conakry, kind of studying the arts and the culture. And Ghana was actually the last country that I visited. So far, I'm going to go to more. Yeah. But when I came to Ghana, it was just, I can't really explain what it was for me, but it was just something that just told me that I should sit down here and I should begin to work here. And that I realized when I came here, I don't know if it was something in the air or the water, but I think that's when I truly, truly realized that, if I'm blessed, I'll be able to live a good life and die doing the same work, connecting African people of the diaspora to the continent.
You are going to bless us with Jamestown to Jamestown, and it's associated with the NAACP.
Yes.
Before we talk about that, I just want to know a bit about how African you are. What's the name of your children?
So Ghanaians will appreciate this. My son, his name is Kwaku Diallo Tariq. He has his day name, as a lot of Ghanaians do, Kwaku, male child born on Wednesday. And then he's named after me, and then he's named after my wife's father. And then he carries the last name Sumbry, which is the name of my father's family. My daughter actually has a very old Ghanaian name. Her name is Ama Ampoma Akomwa. So she has a very, very old Ghanaian name. And, you know, we gave our children African names the same way that my mom and my father gave us African names. I have a granddaughter. My son has a daughter. Her name is AC. So we're very much in tune and aligned with Ghanaian culture. A lot of my first visits to Ghana was not necessarily coming to Accra, coming to the city, but more or less more in the eastern region and kind of studying and learning Ghanaian culture. So, you know, learning the culture is really where I started here in Ghana. Understanding Ghana is a matrilineal society, kind of learning about the chieftaincy system and learning about some of the traditional ways in Ghana is really where I started here. So by the time I came to Accra and kind of started to get involved in tourism, specifically here in Ghana and other things, I had an understanding of Ghanaian culture, you know, so I kind of started in culture. And I would say I'm a culturalist more than a lot of things.
So from your family, you moved to the NAACP, where you're trying to connect them directly to the continent. How do you score that feat? How do you get them to accept to come here?
So, you know, it's interesting. So if I can kind of go back a little bit, if you don't mind, and just talk about the year of return and kind of my involvement in some of that. So the Back to Africa Festival is a festival I created. Being from Washington, D.C., I love go-go music. And I had always wanted to bring a go-go band to Africa because I felt like go-go music is purely African, the heavy percussive, the call and response. And I just knew, and I'm a big fan of go-go music, particularly the backyard band. And I really just needed to, it was, again, sometimes things are placed on you, and it was just a passion of mine for years. So we finally made that happen in 2018, but in 2017, during the planning, I met Mr. Kwesi Agyeman, who's the CEO of Ghana Tourism Authority. He happened to be in DC. And a good friend of mine, Gina Page, good friend and colleague, who's the president of AfricanAncestry.com, said, hey, would you like to meet the CEO of Ghana Tourism Authority? I have a connection with him, and if you're taking a go-go band, you should partner. I said, okay, cool. So we met, and then he said, wow, you know, that's really interesting. And at the time, I had about 80 to 100 people who had signed up and expressed interest. And he thought that was, you know, I guess considerable that, wow, it's just you and you have 80 people coming? That's amazing. So he and I had some conversation. I said, well, look, I'm going to be in Ghana soon. I came to Ghana. I met with him. And in 2017, we signed the MOU. He saw my commitment and the things that I were doing. And I had bigger ideas than that. So that was a success. The Back to Africa Festival started 2018. We did it again this year. We had 85 people come this year of all ages. But in 2018, after that, we began having a conversation, and I began asking questions about what some of their goals were and kind of how that would work. And I realized that, you know, with the redevelopment of Africa, with tourism, and Ghana, I believe in most other African countries, had not been getting the number of African Americans that they had been getting to come visit the country. And I thought that it was honorable that the country wasn't just interested in anybody coming. Naturally, Ghana wants to welcome everybody that wants to come, but there was a serious interest in connecting Black people from the diaspora back to the continent and to have that linkage become stronger. And I presented, you know, the idea of 400 years as a strategy, as something that Ghana could use to welcome their brothers and sisters back home. I felt like we all felt like it's a moment in history that needed to be seized. So it's not just a plan, it's not just a strategy, but it's a real live moment in history that it only happens one year. There's only going to be one 2019, right? There was only one 1619. So after this year has passed, there'll be other years, but this particular year is a very spiritual year, a very strong year. And for people who are paying attention, you can see and feel the paradigm shift all over the world. You see how African people are beginning to come together, are expressing ownership. We see hashtag Black Excellence and everything. You see people like Jay-Z and Diddy talking about ownership, and more people talking about working together and unifying. So I feel like the Year of Return is an extension of that. At any rate, in March of 2018, the Ghana Tourism Authority traveled to the United States. I organized a 3-state tour: Chicago, DC, and New York. And then after that, we began conversations about what this could look like for 2019. We pulled together a steering committee. There are and have been so many people involved from the beginning. Most people are familiar with the Panifest Foundation, and Panifest has been going strong for 26 years. Panifest is on the steering committee, naturally Ghana Tourism Authority under the auspices of the Ministry of Tourism, and so many others that have been involved. There are just a lot of names. I hate when you start mentioning names because you leave somebody out, but I was fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, and I was ready. I was committed. So that's kind of how we got to here. And I'm a creative also. So when you're in the space of creating and manifesting, I always say that our job is to be a clean and acceptable vehicle. We have to allow ourselves to be a pass-through, and ideas come. A lot of us get ideas, we just don't follow them. And it's like I was thinking I'm like a rapper in the studio creating a new song, and it hit me, Jamestown to Jamestown. I personally believe that the reverse, requires physical travel. And as I began to do research about when that ship landed in 1619, that ship, it says late August. In all of the research you'll find late August. And I read somewhere August 20th. So I said, okay, wow. I had already had a partnership with South African Airways. So I'm like, so we could leave IAD, arrive here on the 20th. Wow, how powerful would it be to go to Jamestown, Virginia, touch the shores, make a tribute to our ancestors there, and then the next day get on a plane and touch the shores in Jamestown, Accra. So when I thought of that, I just got goosebumps. And I was like, this is powerful. And I was like, but this is bigger than me. It's much bigger than me. Who could represent this? Who deserves to represent this? Who already has a long history of alignment? The NAACP is the nation's oldest civil rights and justice organization, 100 years old. One of its founders, W.B. Du Bois, a good friend and colleague of Kwame Nkrumah, is buried here, spent the rest of his life here. So a friend of mine introduced me to members of the NAACP. Shouts out to Terry Apone, my brother. He introduced me to the NAACP. We had a conversation. I explained it to him. Hey, look, I'm here working with the Ghana Tourism Authority, et cetera, et cetera. And here we are. So I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm happy to be a part of the vehicle, and I'm happy to be a part of the team that's making things happen. And as life will have it, sometimes you get kind of pushed into the spotlight or into leadership roles, and when it's for the greater good, you step up.
That's quite a deep story, because looking at your background, your folks, your parents, your mother, they groomed you for this. It's like you're a bridge, and there was a lot put into you.
Yes.
From education to experiences in life, and also to movement in the continent. And now, this 2019, which will never come again, you are acting as a bridge, and you are using all your experiences to connect those in the diaspora to the continent. And that's quite a huge deal for a lot of African Americans. How are they reacting to this?
Oh, man. You get so many reactions, man. So many people are ready to come. And the way the media has traditionally perceived the continent of Africa, people still don't know that Africa is a continent, that there are 54 countries, and in each country there's so many languages and dialects, traditions, customs, and things like that. So, again, having been raised in this understanding, people are excited. We were talking earlier, and I was saying one of the things that we do with this is we shorten the distance. Africa seems so far away, it seems insurmountable, it seems cloudy, people don't know how to get here, people don't know how to come, they don't know what to do. and it's not that far away. So some of what we're doing is we shorten the distance. We make coming to Africa, and I hate saying coming to Africa because it's a whole continent. So let's say coming to Ghana, for lack of coming to Africa through Ghana, because Ghana is still the gateway. We make it more palatable. We make it more realistic. We make it closer. It could be affordable, depending upon the level of experience you want. But people also need to know that they can come here and ball all the way out if they're interested. That you have modern. Ghana is one of those places where modernity is very much alive, but then there's also tradition. Cultural and heritage tourism is very much alive in Ghana, but you can also come here, hang glide off mountains, go mountain hiking, visit waterfalls, go to lakes. You can go to a resort on a beach. You can go to a man-made lake. But for African Americans and people who are victims of the transatlantic slave trade, this historically unique group of people that are victims of the transatlantic slave trade, we get something when we come here that's a little bit hard to quantify. It's something that happens to you when you've been reading and hearing about this your whole life, about enslaved Africans, about what happened, and then you come and you visit Cape Coast Castle, and you go through the door of no return. You go to a place where your ancestors came from. You know, I don't know a lot of people know this, but 75% of the slave castles and dungeons on the west coast of Africa were in Ghana. So it's said that you either, if you didn't come from Ghana, you came through Ghana. So I think that that's another reason why it's significant that Ghana, under His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, has declared this year the year of return. Now, what that means and how that actually happens, and how do people actualize the right of abode, the right to abode, and how do you actually come and integrate into a society, become a citizen, become a resident, get a job, open a business. All of that requires time, effort. Yeah. I hope that one of the things that we're doing, that I'm able to do, is one, help convince people to come visit first. You know, you have to come visit. You have to come see. Come get that feeling and then plan, right? It's not, because, you know, with the year of return, it's all like, oh, year of return, year of return, year of return. And everybody wants to come. But for people who want to move here, people who want to live here, you got to treat it like, I mean, you're not going to move to Oakland without visiting, or Houston or Miami. You're going to come check it out, check the neighborhood, do some research. And I think it's important for people to do that. But from a larger perspective, Black people owe it to themselves, at least once in their life, to touch the ground on the African continent. It awakens something in you that we can't really explain. But when you go home, you're going to see life differently, you're going to move differently, and you're going to be empowered differently. We close that identity gap that we have because of the transatlantic slave trade.
Okay, so the NAACP, they are going to embark on that journey.
Yes.
And how many of them are coming, and what activities are they going to start with in Virginia and then in Ghana?
Right. So I am really, really, really grateful to someone who's now become a friend. Her name is Eris Sims. Shouts out Eris. She's the chief of staff of the NAACP, as well as President Derek Johnson, Darrell Miller, the board, and everybody at the NAACP, because it's a historic organization. It's a big organization. And I am so appreciative of them entrusting us with this journey for their members and other members of the public. I'm also really, really grateful to one of my partners here on the ground, Mr. Kwame Ensung, Sunseekers Tours. I have to do this because it's important for people to understand nobody can do this alone. There are partners, and there are so many people, my wife, my executive assistant, and my team at the Adinkra group who helps to do all of this. The whole year return steering committee, Mr. Ajman, Ghana Tourism. So many people come into play to make this happen, and it's important that I underscore it's never a one-man mission. But the NAACP is coming, so we have a couple of cornerstones of this trip. One, we go to Jamestown, Virginia. We touch the shores of Jamestown, Virginia, a candle lighting ceremony or prayer circle, and just allow people to really soak in this historical moment. And then we visit the Smithsonian Museum of African American Culture, which, you know, traces from the moment Africans arrived in the United States through present day. So we got that vortex, that portal, that gap is what happened in between those 400 years. So after we leave the museum, we actually get on a plane and fly to Ghana. We arrive the next day through South Africa Airways, our airline partner. And when they arrive, the same day they arrive, we go to Jamestown, Virginia. When we go to Jamestown, Virginia, there'll be a grand durbar with the chiefs there, the mayor of Accra, the Ministry of Tourism.
Jamestown, Accra.
Jamestown, Accra.
Yes.
Not Jamestown. We leave Jamestown, Virginia, and we go to Jamestown, Accra. And there'll be a grand durbar welcoming people there. And again, the connection with Jamestown, Accra, and Jamestown, Virginia is several things. One was colonized by the British. Both were colonized and settled by the British, right? That's where the name Jamestown comes from. Both of them are ports on the ocean, which connected the two. So for us, by us retracing that steps on our own, that's powerful alone, and it's more a spiritual, psychological, and reconciliation journey more than it is a historical direct linkage between Jamestown, Accra, and Jamestown, Virginia.
So what will be the impact, finally, what will be the impact to both Ghanaians and also those who are coming from the United States?
Well, one of the things that we do is we have a business and investment summit. So one of the things that we're hoping to happen there is that businesses and people who are interested, who already have small businesses, who work with the NAACP, can partner with Ghanaians who have small businesses and get deals done to help impact here. We will announce what our service project is, but there'll definitely be a service project that's a part of it. Something else that happens that's a big part of the trip is we're going to do an AfricanAncestry.com reveal. What that means is that members on the journey take their AfricanAncestry.com DNA test. We reveal that at the door of no return. People will also get a chance to participate in Akwesidai. It happens to also be August 25th that weekend, and they'll do tours. Again, it's their first trip. So one of the things we want Ghanaians to know about impact is that we're bringing people here who are definitely pouring into the economy, but it also gives them an opportunity to converse, to participate in history, and to get to know us up close, because sometimes I feel like for some people, we are just what they see on TV. So they need to know that all black people aren't the same. You know, people from DC are different from people from Chicago, just like people from Ashanti are different from Eastern region, are different from Western region of Volta. And the foods are different as well. So for us, this is the beginning. So, you know, hashtag beyond 2019, 2019 is a launching pad. We need to know that it's definitely not an end to the means, but it's a means to the end. It's a way to introduce Africa and African culture through Ghana, the gateway, the Black Star country, with African Americans, so that, and Africans of the diaspora, they're Africans in the UK, of the Caribbean, so that we can kind of start that process, right, of bringing people back home and beginning to integrate the two societies. One of the things I'm sure about is that we need each other.
Okay, so Jamestown to Jamestown, and what should people expect, and what's in there for African Americans? I know so many of them will be watching and they'll be interested in joining and being part of the whole process. Yeah,
you know, right now we're expecting over 200 people. 50% of our goal has already been realized. We have people signed up, ready to come. More people are signing up. And what we want to have happen is a very smooth introduction to the African continent. Many of the people that are coming, various ages of the NAACP, but especially some of our older members, you know, they experienced the worst of the worst in America. Prior to civil rights, Jim Crow, fought for our civil rights. These are people who fought for just the opportunity to be proud to be a black person. So to be able to connect them with the African continent, for me, is a serious honor. And we hope that they leave with an understanding of how important it is and how powerful it is for us to continue this connection in building that bridge from America to Africa.
How can people get more information about the Jamestown to Jamestown if they want to be a part of it?
Perfect. You can go to the website Jamestown, 2, Jamestown.com. That's Jamestown, 2, Jamestown.com. All of the information is on the website. There are packages there. You can still sign up. Like for us, this is such a big moment in history that we don't really have a cutoff date. You know, we're honored to partner with South African Airways. They have planes and seats on standby for us. So for us, this is a big deal. Check out Jamestown, 2, Jamestown.com. You can follow the NAACP on Instagram, Twitter at NAACP. For those of you who don't know and been living under a rock, NAACP stands for National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. You can follow us, the Adinkra Group. Check our website. People can definitely find us, ask questions, groups, sign up. You know, we're looking for sponsors. So anybody who want to be a part of this moment in our history, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Diallo Sumbry. You're a visionary leader and you're an African.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is it. This is the new Africa. And for us to be here shows that what you see in the media, all the negative stories, are not the true African story. The African story is with the Africans. So you have to meet the Africans to get the real story. Africa will be Africa, the Africa that we want if we are together. The diaspora is coming. We are all accepting the diaspora. We also accept any black person who is from the continent. Africa is rising and we rise with you. Thank you very much.